So students were thrown into it. They were presented with a case. They may have to take the case to surgery. They might have to run some tests. They had to decide what tests to run. Some of these tests had consequences. Some of the surgical procedures had consequences. So, for example, students could be working away and they decide to carry out an operation. And, the reply would come back, you've killed the cat. And that's it. End of that case. The cat's dead. So, it really put them. It really put the heat on the students. You can see here another part of the screen. This is in the surgery, and throughout the process, there were these fill-in boxes, text boxes, where students could enter answers to the questions they were asked. These were also assessed. Multi-choice questions. So it was pretty full. At the end of it, they were assessed from questions during diagnosis. So those boxes they filled in. 75% of the mark came from that. But also, our academic went through the log pathway and showed and actually assessed their approach to the particular problem, and that was worth 25% of their grade. And he just grouped the pathway into four different groups. One, correct diagnosis, and a pretty logical, expedient path that a good student would take. Correct diagnosis, few wrong turns or narrowed down too quickly. Correct diagnosis, but with many unnecessary steps. And incorrect diagnosis. So he'd sort of mark them or grade them accordingly. So there's an example, again, where scenarios are used, scenario-based learning is used, but the assessment in this case is a full examination. So they start at a particular time, they end at a particular time. You've got to cover 3 of these scenarios. And their pathways assessed, as well as any of their inputs as they go through the process. So, anyone got any comments or questions on that particular example? Yeah, Frederick.
Terry, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Right, thanks. Terry, when you talk about a virtual environment, are you talking about a 3D immersive environment, or is it just a series of pictures which they then click on around the virtual picture?
Yeah, no, it's two-dimensional, so it's a series of pictures. SBL Interactive gives you a navigation framework which you can work through. But within the content screen, of course, you can embed almost anything that you could embed in a web page. So you can have videos or, any media that you might want to put in there. Put documents in there, plugins, various other bits and pieces. But essentially, it's a 2D framework.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, nobody else? Yes, Ian.
It's not really a question. I have a kind of interest around the scenario, I suppose, and the extent of how complex it is in terms of kind of a patient presenting or something, or the kind of human context of it, or is it more around gaining the knowledge and being able to apply it and do the diagnosis? Again, you imagine being in a medical faculty, all this kind of stuff comes up, that actually doing diagnosis and being involved in cases, there's a lot of complexity beyond the kind of, the branching, here's a piece of knowledge or 2 bits, let's go on to the next. I'm just wondering about that.
Yes, I'm not sure if I can answer for the vet scenario, because that I didn't have too much to do with the design of that. But I can perhaps talk a little bit about my own diagnostic scenarios, which I haven't shown you any of those, but I have another exercise that I do with my students where they've got to actually go out and diagnose a field problem, and in the context of that, they talk to growers and these various things, and I actually faced the same problem as to where do you draw the line? I mean, do you try to model everything that the students could possibly do? You know, how much of a subset of the real world do you give them? If you give them too much of a subset, really you're actually leading them towards the problem, which is not necessarily what you might want. So what I do for those is essentially think of a problem that's you know, suitable for the lesson, something that's not too difficult, and I would, on the presentation of that problem, where students first see it, I make it so that they restrict the possible causes to about 6. So there's 6 possible causes that may well cause this problem. So I scaffold it enough so that it only points to, say, no more than 6. And then I build into the scenario the actions and the environment, the test that will allow them to explore or further explore up to those 6 hypotheses. So, you know, you've got tests that will be appropriate for one of those hypotheses, but maybe not another one. And then, if I've got any time left, I might put in, you know, other perhaps wider tests that might often be available for a diagnostic session. But that's how I sort of make it doable, if you like. So I'm not sure if that's answered your question or not, Ian, but I mean, hopefully that's been helpful.
Yeah, thanks, Stuart. It helps me in my own thinking, so I'm not going to take up more of your time, but it's just things that we have to kind of deal with. It's helpful to get your kind of perspective on that.
Yeah, sure. And let me just, this is more like a story. This was a scenario that's used in a communications course. It's called Communications and Ethics. You can see the learning outcomes there. So the idea of this course is students have to evaluate and apply appropriate research techniques. They've got to discuss and evaluate the nature of ethical communication, dilemmas and issues confronting individuals and organisations. And they've also got to propose strategies for effective and ethical communication in the workplace. So this assignment, it's a fairly large one. Here, it's a little different from the other two. Here, students aren't really expected to, you know, make a diagnosis or a recommendation as to what somebody should do at the end of the scenario. This is a little bit more like a story, if you like, that people follow through, and they're looking over the shoulder of a narrator. They follow through the story, and at various times they're asked questions, which gives them food for thought, so they've got to pause and think a little bit about the story as they go through it. So something that probably takes about 2 hours. The idea here with this particular scenario is that it's focused on ethics. I'll just give you a little bit of the story. Concerns a person doing a research paper who's looking for a research topic, and he's also head of human resources for a fairly large firm. And he decides in the course of looking for his research topic that he's going to do some research on his own staff. Now this is pretty dubious ethically to do this because he is in a position of power. And but he nevertheless plows ahead with this, and he designs a survey. And the survey looks like a staff survey, although it's actually for this particular research project. It's quite cagey about its reasons. And anyway, what happens in the end, I'll just go to the next screen, is that the union finds out about the survey. Now, this human resources manager has been responsible for layoffs in the past, so there's pretty bad blood between him and the union. The union considers the survey maybe